What's up, everyone, and welcome back to Cinematic Reviews. As always, I will be your host, Chris, and this is a show about all things movies and TV. Well, we wrap up Phase 1 today with Marvel's The Avengers, the final installment of Phase 1 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's been a blast doing Marvel Fridays up until now. We'll kick off Phase 2 next week with Iron Man 3, but today we have a jam-packed episode with 3 live reaction trailers. We're going to watch the Boys Season 5 teaser trailer, the Avatar, The Last Airbender Season 2 teaser trailer from Netflix. The Boys is on Prime. And then the Supergirl trailer finally dropped, so we'll watch the teaser trailer from James Gunn's DC Universe Supergirl. It's going to be a jam-packed episode. Then we'll get into our featured film of the day, which I said was Marvel's The Avengers, to wrap up Phase 1 of the MCU. Then we'll get into all the rankings with the villain scale, popcorn scale, and the MCU ranking for the Avengers film. Before we get into all that, though, a couple reminders at the top of the episode. You can watch the show every week at youtube.com/the Cinematic Reviews. You can watch the audio version on your favorite podcast listening service. Just look for Cinematic Reviews. You can also follow the social media pages on Facebook, X, and Instagram. That's where I post all the artwork from the episode, so you can look at those with a better look-see. You can also look for breaking news and any other headlines coming out of Hollywood. You hit subscribe, hit that follow button. It helps out the show a lot. It's been a fun time doing this the past 3 years. The last year for 2025 has been the first year on YouTube, so thanks for everyone for subscribing. I just released the Wicked for Good episode last time, so go ahead and check that out if you have not. And then, of course, check out the rest of the cinematic archives for the podcast, including Phase 1 of Marvel Friday. So with that, let's get over to news and reactions with those 3 live reaction trailers for The Boys, Supergirl, and Avatar: The Last Airbender. So up first, we're going to watch The Boys Season 5 teaser trailer that dropped about a week ago. I've been saving it for today's episode. I like doing these live reactions on the Marvel episode, so we're going to do this one. Then we'll jump into the Avatar: The Last Airbender Season 2 teaser, which came out a few days ago, and then we'll wrap things up in news and reactions with that Supergirl trailer that just came out on Thursday. Very excited for that one. So let's fire up The Boys final season teaser trailer. Oh, there's my boy Butcher. Looks like we might be getting some goodbyes from some of the main cast. That's pretty interesting. I love the song choice for this trailer. It's perfect. Oh ho ho. Oh, we get Soldier Boy back. Jared Padalecki. That's awesome. We're going to get Jensen Ackles and Jared Padalecki together. This is going to be so awesome. April 8th is the final season. So yeah, this is going to be awesome. It's a bittersweet moment for this. You know, The Boys has been around for a few years now. It's one of my favorite shows currently streaming. It's an incredible show, and now it's come to an end. But there, of course, are some spinoffs coming. We have the Soldier Boy spinoff, as well as the Gen V spinoff currently going on. I think they're on like season 3. and then we'll end up getting that Soldier Boy spinoff as well. But this looks great. There's going to be probably the most anticipated show of the year, if not one of the most. It looks like it's just back where it is with the gore, with the intensity, with the violence, and the characters that we all grown to love the last 5 seasons. Looks like Homelander is going to be continuing on his rampage. Butcher wants to end this finally with that battle between him and Homelander. If you don't know how huge that moment is with Jared Padalecki and Jensen Ackles, they of course starred together in the Supernatural show for 15 plus years. So getting them on screen together in the Boys show is pretty massive for me. I'm a huge fan of that Supernatural show when it was airing on TV every week. I love Jared Padalecki. I love Jensen Ackles. So this is going to be really awesome for me as a huge Supernatural fan to see these two actors on screen together. It's going to be a blast. I can't wait for The Boys season 5. That will be streaming on Prime every week starting April 8th, it looks like. So let me fire up this Last Airbender trailer here, and we will get this rolling. So this one will be on Netflix.
Everything is vibrating all around us.
Wow, he looks so much different.
There's a secret life beneath us. We're all connected through the earth.
Oh, it's tough. Heck yeah. Been waiting for her to join this live action version for so long. She looks great too. It was a great casting choice for her. That is going to be. I'm very very excited for that Airbender. So I was a huge fan of the Nickelodeon show, which this is heavily based on. Season 1, I was very impressed with season 1 when that came out on Netflix. My reaction here, first off, is Aang. The actor that plays Aang has definitely grown up. He looks a lot different. Looks a lot older, which shows you probably going to be some time lapse here into the near future, but we get all the cast back. We get some newcomer like Toph, who ends up being a huge character in the animated show once they meet her, who is Earthbender. So it looks like they're going to be focusing more on Aang's teaching of earthbending, with also probably getting some more improvements on his waterbending technique. So this is going to be cool. It looks incredible. I'm very excited for season 2. It sounds like season 3 is almost wrapped up filming, so we should be getting that not too far away from that now. So that'll probably uh, end this version of The Last Airbender. The animated show was only 3 seasons too, so that'll focus on the firebending, which will be the final step in Aang becoming full-on Avatar mode. So very exciting. The trailer looks great. I'm very very much excited for season 2 of The Last Airbender. It's a show that I've grown to really really like. Even though like the Nickelodeon show is I think still far superior. This Netflix version is pretty outstanding, and I'm super super excited about it. So to wrap things up with news and reactions, we have one more final trailer to react to, and that is Supergirl from James Gunn's DC Universe. We're gonna fire this up here, and we will get it going. Oh, little Crypto. Happy to see him back. He was one of my favorite characters in the Superman movie. He's I am so glad she's playing Supergirl. This is going to be a lot of fun. Greg Gillespie, huh? God, this looks incredible.
Okay, this does not look like this is gonna end well for you guys.
She's kind of got a Star-Lord vibe going to her in this one.
Do you have this on your planet of house like you? No, it's a pretty small group of two.
I think that was Lobo. I'd have to do a screen-for-screen shot on that one.
When I see the truth.
She looks great in that suit. I am very excited for that. I'm very impressed with that trailer too. It gets you really hyped up for this new Supergirl movie. Millie Alcott, if you're not familiar with her, she came on the Hollywood sphere with the House of the Dragon show. She's an actress that I've really grown fond of, and I think she looks great in this trailer. She's going to be awesome as Supergirl. We got a little bit of glimpse of her at the end of the Superman movie from James Gunn, and now she's getting her own movie to kind of expand this DCU that James Gunn is trying to build. It looks amazing. We get Crypto back, which was a blast for me to watch in the Superman movie, so we get more of him. Looks like Jason Momoa's Lobo is going to pop up. He was in there for like a half a second, but I'd have to go back and do like a screen-by-screen shot to get a really good look at him. But he looks great in there. This looks like a lot of fun. She's got that Star-Lord vibe from Guardians of the Galaxy going on with her, which not surprising because James Gunn directed Guardians of the Galaxy. Star-Lord was a big character that he kind of brought forward and became a fan favorite in the Marvel universe, and now looks like he's kind of bringing over the best parts of that into the Supergirl part of the DCU. So very exciting. I love the music choice in the trailer. The action looks fun. Millie Alcott's going to be fantastic as Supergirl. I'm very, very much excited for this movie coming out in June of 2026. So that is the news and reactions for today. If you want a better look at those trailers, go ahead and look up those on YouTube. But yeah, very, very excited for those three projects coming up in the year of 2026. So let's get to our featured film of the day with Marvel's The Avengers to wrap up phase 1 of Marvel Friday.
War has started. And we are hopelessly outgunned.
Director Fury, I think it's time.
You here with the mission, sir? Trying to get me back in the world?
Trying to save it.
Doctor, we need you to come in.
What if I say no?
I'll persuade you.
What are you asking me to do? It's called the Avengers Initiative.
I thought I didn't qualify. Apparently I'm, what is it, volatile, self-obsessed, and don't play well with others.
I think they need a timeout.
How desperate are you? And you call on such lost creatures to defend you.
You have made me very desperate.
We're not a team. We're a time bomb.
This is nothing we were ever trained for.
Guys, I'm bringing the party to you.
So the Avengers, the first Avengers movie in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, released on May 4th, 2012. May the 4th be with you all, you Marvel fans. It grossed a whopping $1.5 billion off of an estimated $220 million budget. Now, it's probably more than that with marketing and advertisement and all of that, but that is kind of like the main production budget for this movie was about $220 million. This was a massive, massive hit for Marvel and for Disney. This is where the cinematic universe of Marvel became the MCU. Like I know we've had 5 movies before this, but when this Avengers movie dropped, this is the first one produced and distributed and all that stuff by Disney Marvel. So this was like their first like big budget movie after acquiring the rights of Marvel. This is what the MCU is now. This is where we get one of the biggest, if not the biggest, movie franchises ever put on screen. This is kind of the template for what comes next in the Marvel universe and up until now with the most recent Fantastic Four movie. Like this was the origin of the MCU. But like I said, we had 5 movies before here with like from Paramount and Universal and some of the other smaller studios that put together those first phase of Marvel. But this is where the MCU really is born, and going forward, this is kind of the template for that. So it's a really, really fun movie. It brings together Iron Man, Captain America, Thor, Hawkeye, Black Widow, and Hulk. It also has characters returning like Nick Fury, Gwyneth Paltrow's Pepper Potts shows up, Clark Gregg's Agent Coulson shows up, and then we get a newcomer with Maria Hill, played by Kobe Smulders, who kind of takes over that role that Black Widow played in Iron Man 2, where she was kind of like Nick Fury's right-hand person. Now with Black Widow becoming a full-fledged Avenger, Maria Hill has kind of moved up the ranks and taken over that number 2 spot for Nick Fury within the SHIELD organization. So yeah, and then Loki returns as the villain in this movie, as the first villain for the Avengers movie. So, and he was great. Tom Hiddleston returns to do his Loki thing, and it was great. We also get some other teases in there that we'll talk about as we go through this review. But very excited to finally do the first Avengers movie on the podcast. So a little synopsis: Earth's mightiest heroes must come together and learn to fight as a team if they are going to stop the evil Loki and his alien army from the enslaving humanity. His army, of course, is the Jatari, is a otherworldly army that was put together by Thanos, which we'll talk about briefly in here. We get a really cool reveal at the end of this movie with Thanos and kind of setting up the Infinity story, the Infinity Stone story that ends up being concluded with Avengers Endgame. So a lot of stuff that they're setting up in here, but they did it in a much better job. You know, like I mentioned on the Iron Man 2 episode, they really crammed in a lot of universe building in that movie, and they do so in here as well. But I think they did a much better job at kind of explaining it and presenting it to the audience to where it doesn't feel too overwhelming or too jam-packed. They put a lot of humor and a lot of fun scenes in this movie for all ages, you know, from 5-year-olds to all the way up to 60-year-olds are going to watch this movie in theaters because it's such a family fun event. And we'll dive into the cast here a little more in depth. So Robert Downey Jr., of course, returns as Tony Stark, aka Iron Man, who did 2 movies previously. We catch up with him where Tony is developing clean energy, so to speak. He's put away the military side of Stark Industry and is kind of moving the company into a new direction with clean energy and long-lasting, sustainable energy for the world. He starts off with his new Stark Tower in New York, where he's powering that thing with clean energy for like 5 to 10 years, and then hopefully bringing that to the world and becoming a poster child, I guess you could say, for clean energy versus being the spokesperson for weapons and military manufacturing like he did in the first movie. So we catch up with Tony. He is now in a pretty much full blown relationship with Pepper Potts, who was at first where we were introduced to the Tony Stark character. She was his assistant, now kind of overtaking the CEO role of Stark Industries so that Tony can focus on the Iron Man duties and now the Avengers duties that he has been tasked with. But they are now in a full blown relationship, and that was cool to get some catch up with them. Catching up with Steve Rogers, aka Captain America, who is once again played by Chris Evans. We talked about him a lot on the last episode with the first Captain America movie. This is basically a sequel to that movie where he's awakened from the ice that he was in for 70 plus years, and he's kind of quickly brought up to speed with the modern day world and what's going on. We get that really cool scene where he's in the gym punching bags, and Nick Fury's kind of debriefing him on Loki and the Tesseract. And you get that really cool line where Nick Fury's like, "Can you give us any insights or advice on the Tesseract? I mean, you're the only really expert alive that has been near it." And Chris Evans just says a few words, being, "You should have left it in the ocean," meaning you don't understand this power and you can't control it. So then we start this. This is kind of the origin of that push and pull between Captain America and like government agencies, which we'll really dive into in Winter Soldier and Civil War as the Captain America sequels. I'm super excited for those. But this is kind of like that first nugget of this tension or kind of split relationship between Captain America and this new modern day government. It's just very awesome to see Chris Evans again, and also with him interacting with all these characters. Like this is massive for when this movie came out. Like you have a few of the like most famous comic book characters known to man interacting with each other for the first time on screen in live action. Like this changed not only Marvel movies, but this changed the superhero genre in general. Like this was a massive, massive achievement by Marvel Disney to give us a live action Avengers movie that grossed over $1 billion because it's actually really, really well done and really, really good. We'll get into the director of this movie and kind of my thoughts on him because they're very negative, but he did a fantastic job on this movie, and I like to give him his flowers where they're due. But Joss Whedon is not somebody that I would consider a great director or even a good director. I think this was just kind of lightning in a bottle where they got him at the right time, at the right place, and they were able to kind of build on what they already started with the first 5 movies. And then he kind of just brought this to life. He would eventually go on to do the sequel to the Avengers with Age of Ultron, which I think is a very underrated movie within the MCU, and I'm excited to finally talk about that one as well in the podcast when we get to that one. But this movie in particular, it changed the superhero genre forever, and now a lot of these different other franchises like DC have been trying to replicate this, where they had their version of it with the Justice League, which, depending on who you ask, I think Snyder's take on the Justice League was a success. Now others, like the studio itself of Warner Brothers, would consider that a failure. I think what he did wasn't quite the right way that he should have, but I understand that they didn't want to copy and paste what Marvel did, because then they would get a lot of backlash from like, "Oh, you're just copying Marvel," and then Marvel might come out and say, "Oh, look, we're so much better than DC because they're literally copying our formula." What DC and Warner Brothers tried to do was try to do the same thing, but in a different way, where they did a couple of movies and then they quickly did a team up movie and then they would branch off. Whereas Marvel did it actually correctly, where you have this build up with, you have each character of this team have their own movie, their own adventure. You get to kind of spend time with that character. And then by the time you team them up, you're like invested in this character. You start to have your favorites. You start to have ones that you don't really care about. Like for me, when this movie came out, I think leading up to this, Iron Man was my favorite. Now, I know a lot of people probably were more on the Captain America side, but I really liked what Robert Downey Jr. did with Iron Man and the Tony Stark character. So I was heavily invested in him leading up into this movie when it came out in 2012. Uh, but you have your team Hulks, your team Thors, your team Captain Americas, your team Tony. You even had your team Hawkeyes, and that's what's cool about the MCU is that you can be a fan overall, but you can also be. It's also paired up into little groups. Like me, I'm Team Spider-Man. Like Spider-Man's my favorite Marvel character. He's my favorite superhero of all time. So eventually, when Spider-Man comes in the MCU, that's what team I'm on. I'm like, give me more Spider-Man. Like I want Spider-Man in every single movie, every single Avengers movie. And there's other people like that too, where the Thor fans out there, like they want Thor in every movie because they love Chris Hemsworth's version of it, or they just grew up with the Thor comics. And that's the beauty of this Avengers movie is that it brings all these different fans together into one screen and you get to watch them all together. Like my dad's a big Captain America fan. It's his favorite superhero. My brother absolutely loves Thor and my nephew loves Hulk. And it's really cool to watch this movie together where you have all these different fans come together and just enjoy this one experience. And they did a fantastic job at doing that. And I want to give Joss Whedon and Disney Marvel their flowers for making one of the biggest movies to change Hollywood and to change the superhero genre forever. So that was my little rant there. So back to the casting here. You have Thor, who is once a kid played by Chris Hemsworth. We got his first movie. We catch up with him where we don't really get to catch up with him. We kind of get little bits and pieces of there. We don't get to see Asgard in this movie. We do get caught up where him and Phil Coulson are looking at the monitor. Coulson's explaining, we found Jane Foster. She's off location. She's protected. She's safe. Originally, I'm stepping on fun facts a little bit, but Natalie Portman was originally supposed to be in this movie to kind of like bring in that Thor movie and bridge the gap a little bit. But with some other things coming up, she wasn't able to be in this one. So they kind of threw that line in there to just kind of catch you up with where Natalie Portman's character is from that first Thor movie. But Chris Hemsworth looks great. He looks jacked. The suit looks good. He doesn't really miss a beat. It's like copy and pasting the character from the first Thor movie is really cool how they brought him in there. But we do get newcomer Mark Ruffalo, who takes over the Bruce Banner Hulk character, previously played by Edward Norton in the Incredible Hulk movie. Now, Norton was originally supposed to be in this movie, but with negotiations and contract disputes and all that stuff, they eventually went with their first choice, which was Mark Ruffalo back in the day. Now they pretty much got their guy now, and he's been the Hulk ever since. He's great in here. I was very excited to see Mark Ruffalo's version of Bruce Banner. He's my favorite version of the character, even though I did like what Norton did with the character in the Incredible Hulk movie. I really like Mark Ruffalo as Hulk / Bruce Banner, and it's really great. Lou Ferrigno comes back and does the voice work for Hulk as he always does, and he did a great job there. But I really like Bruce Banner's or Mark Ruffalo's Bruce Banner in here is really, really cool. And he starts this really cool like science bromance with Tony Stark, and we get to eventually see that through the MCU as we get more screen time with them, and they kind of form this bromance with each other in this movie. We get the return of my gal Scarlett Johansson as Natasha Romanoff, aka Black Widow. We get caught up with her. She's on a mission in it looks like Russia. She gets called in by Coulson to recruit Bruce Banner and bring him onto the team. She's great in here. She's got a really good. You get a little bit of backstory with her and Hawkeye, who I'll talk about here in a second, where they have been on a bunch of missions together. She owes him a debt, so there's this really good friendship bond with each other over the missions that they've come together. But it's really cool to see Black Widow come back and be one of the original 6 Avengers. And then to wrap up those 6 is Clint Barton, aka Hawkeye, played by Jeremy Renner, who is fantastic. I love him as Hawkeye. Most of the movie he's under the control of Loki with his staff under my control. Same thing with Eric Selvig, who comes back from the Thor movie as played by Stellan Skarsgård, and we'll get to him once we talk about the side characters in here. But Clint Barton, aka Hawkeye, he doesn't have a huge role in this one, but he eventually in the Age of Ultron is kind of like his story gets brought to light, and Jeremy Renner does a fantastic job he cracks a bunch of jokes and is really good with the bow action. So Jeremy Renner is fantastic as Hawkeye. And then the villain, of course, like I said, is Loki, played by Tom Hiddleston once again. To catch up with him, he is lost in space after the events of the first Thor movie. He ends up coming across this staff, which eventually gets revealed that is what's keeping the Mind Stone. That's how he's able to control people through that staff, is because the Infinity Stone is inside of that staff. We don't know this at the time. Eventually, well, I guess if you've read the comics, and you can probably guess what that was. At the time, I wasn't familiar with the Infinity Stones as much. So that ends up getting revealed later on. I think in Age of Ultron is where they reveal that is actually the Mind Stone. And he's able to control Eric Selvig, Clint Barton, and a bunch of other people to do his dirty work as he tries to conquer Earth with the Jatari. But Tom Hiddleston is fantastic in here. I think this, at the time, this was the best version of Loki that we got. Even though he was great in the first Thor movie, this is really where he gets to dive into the character and just kind of shines as Loki. Is very good casting. So looking at the side characters, Nick Fury returns, again played by Samuel L. Jackson. He's forming this Avengers team that they call as Phase 1, I think. It gets revealed that he is a part of this kind of world council that oversees the world, different countries around the world, from either planetary threats or extraterrestrial threats, as we see in this movie. They are discussing what they call Phase 2, where they take the Tesseract and make weapons of mass destructions as kind of a flex to the beings out in the universe, as like, hey, Earth can handle its own. But as the Avengers team gets formed and they try to convince Fury that, hey, that's not the way, you start flexing stuff like that, and people are going to come in and test you, and we don't want that. We want to protect the Earth. So you get this big push and pull between Nick Fury and the Avengers, but then eventually Nick Fury reveals to the group that, hey, my first plan was the Avengers. Like, I don't want to mess with those a-holes on the World Council. My plan was the Avengers, and they thought I was crazy, that we were going to bring up, 6 super beings and have them team up together to protect the Earth. And that's where you really start to understand that Nick Fury does have the best wishes and desires for Earth, and he wants to do this correctly, and he believes in the Avenger team, and they just needed that kind of push. And then that push ends up being Phil Coulson, who's again played by Clark Gregg. He's popped up, within the first couple movies as a side character, but now he's kind of at the forefront. He unfortunately dies in here, which was a huge moment in the MCU, where they give him that final push as a team to come together and to take on this common threat that killed this guy that they've grown to love with. And Clark Gregg is fantastic. I mean, his death scene is sad and depressing, but he does it in the Marvel fashion, where he gives us one last joke before he dies, where he is on the ground. Loki's giving this big spiel, and then he fires this big gun that was in as a prototype weapon, and then he goes, that's what it does. And it's a comedic moment, but then at the same time, we're like, oh shit, now he's dead. This is pretty depressing, but he does come back in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. If you ever watch that show, he does get brought back from life. We just don't get to see him in like these movies or these main TV shows again. I think that was like ABC did that Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. show just to kind of keep the spirit of Phil Coulson alive. But in the main timeline of the MCU, he is dead, and everybody thinks that he's dead. He never comes back as like, hey guys, Nick Fury actually brought me back to life, and I've been alive this whole time. They never did that. They kept him dead within this main storyline with the Avengers, and I thought that was a smart idea. Like I said, Maria Hill, played by Kobe Smulders, she kind of takes over that role of Nick Fury's right-hand person since Black Widow becomes a member of the Avengers. Eric Selvig from the Thor movie, played by Stellan Skarsgård, returns as well. He spends most of the movie just like Jeremy Renner under the mind control. Eventually, he gets snapped out of it from, I believe, Thor or Iron Man does that when he blasts the machine that Eric Selvig created for Loki to have this portal up in the sky to transport the Chitauri into Earth using the Tesseract, or the Space Stone as it is. So we get some more. He's kind of the bridge between the Thor movie and the Avengers movie, which was cool. And then, of course, Pepper Potts, like I mentioned, she is in a full-blown relationship with Tony Stark now. She, again, is played by Gwyneth Paltrow, and she's fantastic in there. And they have this really cool kind of like honeymoon phase romance that they're going to, that they were building off of Iron Man 2, and it's great to see her and catch up with that whole relationship there. So that kind of wraps up the cast portion of the movie. Pretty small cast, most of it's around the main 6 Avengers and the Loki character, so it's really cool there. Director Joss Whedon. Okay, let's get into this. I'm going to get onto my little bit of rant here. I do not like Joss Whedon. I do not think he's a good director. Now, my personal views aside, maybe you think he's a good director. Maybe you even think he's a great director. I know he's given us some really good stuff over the years. I don't think he's a good director, and it could partially because of the behind-the-scenes stuff that he has been accused of, and I don't see him as just accusations. I see them as facts. He is not a friendly person to be around on set. He is very intense and very cruel to his cast. Gal Gadot did a really touching interview / article of her experience on the set of Justice League with him, and it's very disgusting and very unfortunate that she had to go through that in her career path that she has gone down. But Joss Whedon has been a part of some big projects like Firefly. He was probably most known for leading up to the Avengers. He was involved with Cabin in the Woods. He also was involved with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. He eventually went on to direct Justice League, taking over from Zack Snyder when Zack Snyder had to step away with the unfortunate death of his daughter. But he ended up screwing up that whole movie anyways. He wrote and then directed the sequel to this movie of Age of Ultron, and then that was it for the Avengers. Once things came out about how he handled things on the set of Justice League, Marvel didn't touch him anymore. DC didn't touch him anymore. And I don't think he's really done anything since. Let's pull up his filmography here and just kind of see what he's done lately. Looks like the last thing he was a part of was a show in 2021. Does he have anything upcoming? There's a couple of things in development. Looks like a World War II horror project and then something else in development. But he really hasn't been doing much. Looks like he does a bunch of executive producing. But as far as directing, it looks like 2021 was the last time that he had any director credits. Writer, what was the last time? Same thing again. He wrote for the same show in 2021. So he hasn't really done anything since COVID. And it's probably because everything was coming out about how he is on set with actors and all the poor experiences that people... There's even stories about the behind the scenes of this movie and Age of Ultron. And then the biggest one was probably those stories that you heard, like I said, from the Justice League set. And that just kind of torched his career, and rightfully so, because I don't think he's a good director. I think he just got lucky that Marvel kind of did all the prep work for this movie, and all he really had to do was just kind of find the right way to form this team together and just put a bunch of jokes in there. There's a reason why this movie and the second movie, Age of Ultron, isn't the best Avengers movies. That's when we get into the Russo brothers, who I think is probably the best director/directors that we have in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. They're coming back for Doomsday, and we'll talk about a lot of them when we get to their movies. Their first movie is the Captain America Winter Soldier movie, which we'll be talking about in a couple weeks. But Joss Whedon, I'm not a fan of him. I think he's a terrible director. I think he's a bad person, and he just got lucky with this Avengers movie, I think, after all the prep work that Marvel Disney did leading up to this point. And the cast pretty much did a lot of heavy lifting. Like, great, you wrote a script, but the script is only words on paper until you get the right cast. And with Robert Downey Jr., Chris Evans, Mark Ruffalo, all these heavy hitters coming on board, that's what really made the movie what it is the cast and the performances. So Josh Whedon, I don't have any good things to say about it. I think he got lucky with this movie, and it was pretty much just lightning in the bottle, right place, right time, right opportunity, hitting his desk, and all those experiences that those actors faced with him is really unfortunate, and it sucks that they had to go through that. But it's good that their stories got told and people listened, and studios have stopped hiring Josh Whedon, which is great. Good news there that they are actually listening to the actors on set. It's really good. So that's my rant for Josh Whedon. I don't want to soak up any more time for him because he does not deserve it. So let's talk a little bit about that Thanos reveal. And then we'll get into the iconic scenes, favorite quotes, and all the stuff that we normally do. So this Infinity Stone storyline starts here with the Tesseract, which is the Space Stone. Then it eventually gets revealed that Loki's staff had the Mind Stone, so that's 2 Infinity Stones. Then now this phase 2 coming up, I don't want to talk about it too much because we'll get into it deeper and deeper with each project that we do in phase 2, but we eventually get to see the Reality Stone in Thor Dark World. We get to see more of the Tesseract and the Mind Stone, like I said, in Age of Ultron, where we get to meet Vision and Ultron and all that stuff. It's not up until, I think it was phase 3 with Doctor Strange, where we get the Time Stone with him. And then the Soul Stone, of course, we don't see until Infinity War, but this really was the first nugget in this long expanding story of the Infinity Stones and the race for the stones and the reveal of Thanos at the end of this movie, where Thanos is a huge character in the movie. In the comics as well, he's kind of like Marvel's version of Darkseid. If you're familiar with DC's big villain Darkseid, he is on this quest for the Infinity Stones so that he can basically snap his finger and make the world that he thinks in his image. He wants to basically be God and make this universe fruitful by eliminating half the population of the entire universe, so that resources aren't dried up and people are flourishing, which is very, very disturbing and very psychotic to want to eviscerate billions upon billions and trillions of people with a snap of your finger. But in his mind, his so corrupted mind, he sees this as the only way is to kill half the population in order for the other half to flourish and let the universe continue on. But this is really where it gets started. It's not up until Age of Ultron and then Infinity War really throws you through it as catching up with this whole Infinity Quest for the stones. But this is the real big nugget. The beginning of it is the Tesseract, which is really, really cool to get the MacGuffin for the overall MCU at the time. And it's the MacGuffin of this first movie. So I just wanted to make sure I mentioned that because this is really where that Infinity Stone storyline gets started. And then we get that cool Thanos reveal at the end of this movie. And then we get to see him again, I believe, in Guardians of the Galaxy. He pops up and then we get glimpses of him throughout phase 2 and phase 3 leading up into Infinity War, which he becomes the main villain in that one. So this is setting up a lot. This is setting up that long ending Infinity Stone storyline, and it's really cool to see this in 2025 after we've already experienced, Thanos' snap and then Tony's snap, and just kind of revisiting where it all started is been quite an experience for me, and I'm absolutely loving it. So let's get into those iconic scenes, favorite quotes, and then I've got some fun facts for you as well. So iconic scenes, I tried to limit this to the most 5 iconic scenes that I think of when I hear the title, The Avengers. So the first one I have is Loki coming to Earth with his glow stick of destiny, as Tony calls it. This scene's really cool where Loki gets zapped down into this kind of warehouse area of S.H.I.E.L.D. He's got the staff. He's looking for the Tesseract so that he could bring it to Thanos. And then we get to see the power of his staff where he's zapping people. He's mind controlling Eric Selvig and Hawkeye. This is a really cool kind of laying the groundwork for this movie on catching up with Loki and all the power that he has found getting lost in space. So it was really cool. This next scene is probably my favorite scene of the movie. We got this cool fight between Iron Man versus Thor versus Captain America, where our heroes are meeting each other for the first time. Iron Man and Captain America are a little more civil when they meet because of the past that Captain America has with Tony's father. But then once Thor comes onto the scene, things get kind of chaotic. He's only on one mission, and that is to get Loki back to Asgard. But Iron Man and Captain America are trying to get him to understand that this is bigger than Asgard. Like the Earth is in trouble, and we need answers from this guy that we have no idea who he is. So we get this really cool fight with, Iron Man's basically, he's actually kind of going toe to toe with Thor for a little bit here. Thor kind of zaps him with the lightning a few times, but he ends up absorbing the energy and blasting it back at him. We get the cool scene where Iron Man actually picks up Thor and launches him into a tree, which is cool. And then Captain America comes on the scene where he throws his shield at him to get him to stop and understand that they need to start talking. And he asks him to lay the hammer down, and then that's where Thor does that really cool scene where he slams his hammer down on Captain America's vibranium shield, which really shows how strong that shield is because it's able to withstand Thor's hammer without even having like a barely any scratch on it. I think there were some like burn marks on it, but that was really cool to see the full strength and power of Captain America's shield, that it was able to withstand Thor's freaking hammer, which was pretty cool. So that's probably my favorite scene of the movie. Then we get a little later on in the movie, we have the Hulk raging out on the helicarrier from S.H.I.E.L.D. This is where you get to see Mark Ruffalo transform into this new version of the Hulk that we are introduced to, whereas Norton's was a little more, his was like very leaner, darker, grayer skin, where Ruffalo's is more bulkier and bright green, and it looks like Ruffalo's got the hairy chest and all that, which I thought was a cool touch. But this is really cool where he's fighting Thor for most of it. And then the jet comes in and he jumps on the jet and then explodes, and then he falls down to Earth. But it's really cool to see this new version, which would become the Hulk the rest of the way in the MCU with Mark Ruffalo's take. Really, really cool action and this kind of rivalry that Hulk has with Thor on matching each other's power and seeing who's the strongest Avenger. And it continues on in the other movies, but this is where it spawns in this first fight on the helicarrier, and it's a lot of fun. And then the next scene is the unfortunate killing of Agent Coulson by Loki, where Agent Coulson takes his matters into his own hand. He's got this prototype weapon from the Destroyer from the first Thor movie, where he's like, we made this bad boy up when the Destroyer came down to Earth. I don't even know what it does, but let's find out what it is. Before he can pull the trigger, though, Loki does his little trickery and stabs him with the glow stick of destiny in the chest. But before he does that, we get that close scene where I mentioned it already, where Coulson fires the gun at Loki, shoots him into the wall. It's basically fires the power that the Destroyer had with the laser beam. But it is unfortunate that Agent Coulson had to die in here and give the Avengers that kind of spark that they needed to become a team and to take down Loki together. Very, very sad to see Agent Coulson perish. Then the last scene I have is kind of like just the entire ending of the movie, where you get that entire New York battle where the Chitauri are attacking. You have Hulk and Thor on top of these whale-looking things, taking those down. You have Iron Man flying through New York, blasting Chitauri off of the buildings. You have Hawkeye up in one of the skyscrapers, shooting his arrows down. Black Widow and Captain America are on the ground, kind of dealing with the ground forces. Just a lot of really cool like mini battles around New York, and the way the camera angle goes, where we're kind of like, they have like these cool tracking shots with Robert Downey Jr. flying through the city. It's really cool. You get that scene where he's like, Jarvis, the tale of Jonah and the whale? And Jarvis is like, I wouldn't consider him a role model per se, sir. And Tony goes through the whale, blowing it up from the inside. Little cool things like that. And you get Captain America inside the bank or whatever, fighting off the Chitauri, and a grenade goes off, and he goes flying out the window, crashes into a car. It's really cool to see all those little mini battles in New York, and then getting that grand scheme of things. And then, of course, it ends with Iron Man shoving the nuke up into the portal because the freaking world leaders or whatever wanted to drop a freaking nuke on New York because they didn't think the Avengers could handle the Jatari army killing millions upon millions of innocent lives. And Nick Fury's like, you guys are freaking stupid, and we can't be killing millions of people to protect Earth. So Tony takes it upon himself to catch the nuke, carry it up into space, and throw it at the Jatari like mothership, I guess you could call it. And then he ends up flying down back into the portal last second, and Hulk has to catch him, which was a really cool scene too. So really, really awesome. It's a pretty long, iconic scene, but that entire battle is awesome. I absolutely love it. Favorite quotes. I tried to keep this one short because there's just so many quotes, and we could go on for an hour listing them all off. But the first one I have here is Thor, probably the funniest one. I remember listening to this one in theaters, and the entire theater just bursting out laughing. So to kind of set this line up, Thor is explaining to everybody, hey, Loki's my brother. He is of Asgard. I'm here to take him back. And then Black Widow goes, he's killed 80 people in 2 days. And Thor just goes, he's adopted. And it's one of the funniest lines ever said on screen. And I remember the theater just losing their minds and laughing out of it. It was great delivery by Chris Hemsworth. He's like, he's adopted, trying to make some kind of excuse on he doesn't condone his actions, but at the end of the day, he's still his brother. These next few are from Tony Stark. I think most of these lines are from Tony Stark. He's like the comedic relief in this movie, which was perfect. Tony Stark, we have a Hulk in response to Loki, where you get that cool scene where Tony comes into Stark Tower. Loki's already there. They're talking shit to each other. Loki's like, your heroes are scattered. My army is overtaking the city. And Tony's like, we have a Hulk, so that's all we really need. And it was great. This next one from Tony, Phil, his first name is Agent. And I love that he honestly thinks that Coulson's first name was Agent. Like, he didn't know who Phil was. Like, he honestly thought his name was Agent Coulson. It's just perfect delivery by Robert Downey Jr. This one by Hulk, Puny God, as you get that probably the most viewed scene or most meme scene, I guess you could say, from this movie, where Loki encounters the Hulk in Stark Tower, and he goes, enough, I am a god, you can't basically beat me. And Hulk grabs him by the legs, kind of does a back and forth on the ground, walks away, and he goes, puny god, and it is just perfect. I've mentioned this one a couple times already, but Agent Phil Coulson, his last words were, so that's what it does. Speaking, of course, of the prototype weapon. These last two from Tony Stark, I just threw these in because I always thought they were really good. Because if we can't save the Earth, you can be damn well sure we'll avenge it. Giving that line, that threatening speech to Loki as Tony is accepting and believing in the Avengers as a team, and it's just perfect delivery by Robert Downey Jr. And then this last one was a comedic one where he's talking to Hawkeye. Better clinch up Legolas, which of course is a Lord of the Rings reference. So those are your favorite quotes of the Avengers movie. Feel free to write in the comments of your favorite scene or your favorite quote if I did not list them already. And then I have about 10 or so fun facts that I thought were pretty interesting and I wanted to share with you guys on the show to wrap things up. Robert Downey Jr. kept food hidden all over the lab set, and apparently nobody could find where it was, so they just let him continue doing it. In the movie, that's his actual food he's offering, speaking of which, the blueberries, and when he was eating, it wasn't scripted, he was just hungry, which that's what I would do. I would have snacks hidden all over the set, and I would just grab them, I would just start eating them. You know, it feels natural just eating, snacking, talking. And so he's just got this bag of blueberries, and he's offering everybody blueberries from his own Robert Downey's personal stash that he had in there. It was really cool. Joss Whedon, the director, explained that 2 of the founding Avengers members, Ant-Man and Wasp, were cut from the script because the film had too many characters already. Also, the screenwriters didn't want Ant-Man in the MCU until his movie was released, which was released after Age of Ultron. He, of course, is played by Paul Rudd. This is the first Marvel film to cross over $1 billion worldwide, which was pretty amazing for 2012. The biggest movie aside from that it was competing with, that was the year that The Dark Knight Rises came out. And they came out within like 2 months of each other. So it was a pretty big comic book movie year. Chris Hemsworth had to increase and expand his food intake in order to maintain the physique he built up for the Thor movie, consisting of chicken breast, fish, steak, and eggs every day. Hemsworth said that he had to consume his body weight in grams of protein to stay in that much shape. He looked fantastic in here. He was ripped as hell. And then he continues to push his body to the limits later on in the MCU as he expands on the Thor character. According to writer and director Joss Whedon, the film is strongly influenced by the early 1960s Avengers comics, of which he was a fan of while growing up. In those comics, these people shouldn't be in the same room, let alone on the same team, and that is the definition of family, which is a big kind of overarching theme of the movie, is that you have 6 people that normally probably shouldn't work together. They have different personalities, different beliefs, different strengths, different weaknesses, but that's what a family does. You take each different personality and you get this team of dysfunctional beings, and it's really cool how they did it. Edward Norton was originally set to reprise his role from the Incredible Hulk, but negotiations between him and Marvel Studios broke down. Norton was replaced with Mark Ruffalo, who had also been considered for the role in the Incredible Hulk movie. I already mentioned that, but I wanted to mention it one more time. At the time, it surpassed The Dark Knight's record to become the highest grossing comic book film of all time. Highest grossing film of the 2012 as well. It was bigger than The Dark Knight Rises, which was a sequel to Nolan's Dark Knight. Natalie Portman was going to cameo as Jane Foster, but had to drop out when she became pregnant. That is unfortunate, but good on her for giving birth to her child. This film was originally rated R, which this blew my mind. My guess is some of the violence and the bloody nature of the Jatari in that big fight probably made it rated R. I'm sure probably the language and some of the jokes, especially from Robert Downey Jr., probably made it in there. So this was originally rated R, but then it became PG-13. And then the last fun fact, I already mentioned it already, but this was the first Marvel film to be distributed by Walt Disney Pictures. This is where essentially the origin of Marvel Disney. This is the template for every Marvel movie to come afterwards. So, yep, the Avengers movie is great to watch this. This is one that I don't really revisit a whole lot of time because I do prefer a lot of the other Avengers movies and a lot of the other movies. So this one kind of just gets, lost in the shuffle, 50 plus projects in the Marvel universe. So I don't get to revisit this one as much. It's not one that really comes to mind first a lot of the times. And you'll see that as I get to the ranking on where I put it in my list. Just because there's been so many other great movies and that I love within this universe that this one gets slipped through the cracks, but I really enjoy it. It's a great movie. It changed the superhero genre forever. It changed Hollywood forever. And now everyone seems to want to replicate this process that Disney Marvel first kicked into gear with this first phase. And it's fantastic. I really glad I got this opportunity to revisit the first phase of the MCU. I don't get to watch these movies very often because, like I said, all the other movies that came before it, especially, my top 10, which will be getting up to the first movie within my top 10 is coming up here with Winter Soldier. So this one just unfortunately gets lost in the shuffle, but I'm really glad I got to do it for the podcast. And it's one of the reasons why I wanted to do this marathon for Doomsday, was to visit these movies that I haven't seen in years. I haven't seen this one in probably a good 5 years, I would say. So it's really cool to revisit this one for sure. to see where this whole Infinity Stone storyline and where these characters got started from in this massive Marvel cinematic universe that has expanded through 50 plus movies and shows. So awesome Avengers movie. If you haven't seen it in a while, definitely check it out, especially with Avengers Doomsday coming out. I highly recommend rewatching this entire marathon, or if you just want to rewatch the Avengers movies, have at it. This is really good. I had a blast rewatching this. So let's end the show like we always do with the rankings. We'll get through the MCU ranking, villain scale with Loki, and then the popcorn scale for the Avengers. Okay, so first up, we will go through the MCU ranking. I have the Avengers at number 24. So looking at around where that one lands on the list, I won't go through this entire list because we will be here all night. But so looking below it, we've got the Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special, Thor: Love and Thunder, Werewolf by Night, Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, Loki Season 1, Loki Season 2 to wrap up 30. Slightly above it, we've got Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, Black Panther, WandaVision, and the first Ant-Man movie. I absolutely love those. Those are great. But they're all kind of in this same tier of the MCU. I've kind of broken these up into tiers. I believe this is tier 3. So out of, I want to say, like 6 tiers I have. So it's kind of in the middle, smack dab in the middle here. This is actually, after rewatching it for the show, this actually moved up quite a bit. I think I originally had it in like 30, 33 or 34. So it jumped up at least 10 spots after this viewing, which is really cool. It's actually, I love Age of Ultron. It's a very underrated movie. I know a lot of people didn't care for it. I like Age of Ultron. So the fact that it's leapfrogged Age of Ultron is pretty amazing. We'll see how I feel when we get to Age of Ultron, if I end up leapfrogging this again, maybe sneaking this a spot right above it, or maybe a spot right below it. But I'm curious to see where Age of Ultron goes there. But so that is where I have the Avengers, number 24 out of 52. So kind of dead center there. There's just been so many great projects from there. Looking at my top 10, looks like the Winter Soldier will be the first one that we will crack the top 10 with. And then we'll start to get into tiers 2 and 3 and all that with the other ones. So number 24 is where the Avengers lands on my MCU ranking. The villain scale. So as a reminder, the newly created villain scale, we look at the costume, the motivation of the villain of the movie, and then the performance by said actor. We have Loki returning from the first Thor movie, played by Tom Hiddleston. His performance is fantastic. Absolutely love him as Loki in this movie. He gets to build on what he started in the first Thor movie and just basically gets to run away with it. And he becomes a fan favorite after this movie as the villain. Costume looks great. He takes a lot of the concepts from the first Thor movie and they kind of make it a little bit different. You know, adding the horns again, adding the staff or glow stick of destiny, as Tony calls it. Was a really good touch. I really like the costume in here with the green leather, with the gold plating. Really, really good. I love how he looks in here. Then the motivation. He just wants to destroy the Earth, you know, because this is where Thor made his second family, I guess, so to speak. You know, Loki has this desire to rule the world. He's agreed to help Thanos. In return, he gets the power to become a god, basically, an even bigger god than he wants to, and that's pretty psychotic and mischievous and villainous. So perfect motivation for him to just want to destroy the entire Earth to conquer the world. So with that, I'm giving him 5 Thanos heads on the villain scale. I think this is the first villain to get 5. Since I started this rating scale. So Loki from the Avengers gets 5 Thanos heads. Then the last thing we need to do is the popcorn scale. This was a little tricky. I didn't know exactly where to put this to begin with because it's kind of like dead center in the rankings. But I ultimately went with 4 popcorn buckets, what I think is a really good rating. Of course, I thought about giving it 5, but I just couldn't quite get it there. So I went with 4 popcorn buckets. I think that's the best rating I can give it. I think I had it originally at 3, but after this viewing for the podcast, I moved it up to 4. And I think that is a suitable popcorn rating for that. So I will post all that on the social media pages for you to take a look at a closer look. So that does it for the phase 1 of the MCU. Go ahead and check out the other 5 episodes of phase 1, including this one. And then we will continue with phase 2 of the MCU next week with Iron Man 3, which I'm super excited about. That is technically a Christmas movie, so it's funny how I timed this out the weekend before Christmas. So a little bit of a holiday spirit there with our Marvel Friday next week. With Avatar, Fire and Ash coming out next week as well. We'll do an episode on that Christmas week, and then we will have the Christmas show. I will reveal which movie I'll be talking about at the end of the Iron Man 3 podcast episode next week. So be on the lookout for that. I'm super excited to do a Christmas show on the podcast. Also, check out my football podcast, the End Zone Report, every week. I just threw out an episode recapping week 14 and looking ahead to week 15 for fantasy playoffs if you play fantasy football. We're getting close to the end of the regular season. So we'll be looking at a lot of the playoff scenarios and all that. So if you're a huge football fan, check out my podcast, The End Zone Report, that is on Spotify. And you can watch the video version on YouTube. With that, we will see you all next time. Enjoy your weekend. And we will see you with Iron Man 3 as we enter phase 2 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Later, everyone.